Hi, this is Brian, and this is the first Paperjam. You're very welcome. You can tell it's the first one because the production values are not so good on the video side of things because I was simply impressed that I managed to get a camera to hover over my page. It never occurred to me to frame light or focus it correctly, but if you bear with it, it's okay because you'll get to see this page a lot, and at the end I'll show you a nice clear picture of the page so you can see what's on there. You'll see through it anyway. So what I'm doing at this moment is I'm writing some chords and looking for inspiration. So I reach onto my bookshelf and I take the first book I find. It turns out to be King Lear by William Shakespeare. So I look inside and find a little passage and see if there's anything that resonates with me. Fortunately, at the end, there's a nice line that says, so the fool follows after. And I'm thinking something about that feels nice. Following. Because music moves, so if something's following, I can see how that might kind of work its way into a piece of music to create momentum. I'm thinking maybe at this point it could be a canon, but I think I'm going to do a canon for my next piece here. I'm going to do something a little different. So I write down that title so as I don't forget it, and any other little notes about it being a canon. You'll see I write little things here and there to remind myself, because later on I'm going to have to turn this into a piece, record this piece. At the moment I don't listen, and I don't think necessarily listening when you make music is particularly advantageous, because I think as soon as you start listening you're already kind of critiquing and trying to steer it back to a resolution often. I notice with this method you can get pretty out there and still find your way back. So I decided to use fourth chords alternating with chromatic linking chords. So every second chord might be kind of strange, the kind of thing you wouldn't necessarily keep if you were listening, but that I believe on the other side of that door is some pretty incredible stuff. And this is the experiment here to silence the critical voice and think more about the structure. So I make two staves, the fool on the bottom, and I just put smart on the top for now, but the leader, I guess. So whatever the leader does, I think the fool will probably follow. So I transcribe these 4-note chords I have above. You don't see them now. I apologize for that, but you will. And I take the top 2 notes and give it to the top stave there, alternating between those 2 notes. And the fool I write in contrary motion, the bottom 2 notes of that chord. So now I have a kind of a system. I can start transcribing each of those chords I made. The fourth chords and the chromatic linking chords. Break the top notes into 2-note melody on the top line. The bottom line, the fool, takes the bottom 2 notes of the chord. And I can kind of get into that space now that when you create, the one where you're feeling, oh, I'm doing something here. There's a pattern emerging. There's a point to this. So at the moment, I don't know exactly how it's going to sound. It's just a cloud of harmony. But I think I'll simply shift between the different harmonic states, just to see how the expansion and contraction of the fourth chords and the chromatic chords sound. How tense can I get it? How satisfying is the resolution? So I start thinking about rhythm, and I think of a space of time, a few seconds maybe, and in that time, those 2 notes have to happen maybe once, maybe 3 times in that space. And if on the top line they happen 3 times, the next time the fool has to happen 3 times. So the rhythm alternates like bootlaces. I can imagine that. And I decide I want to have a nice sudden chromatic shift at the end to a tetrachord, stacked fourths. Not related to the first one, but potentially a exciting change. I put a symbol over this because it's special. I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do next, but I knew I had to organize that rhythm thing I was thinking about. So I decided to put numbers over the top of the notes. Yeah, this is where I say it could be a canon. In a way it is, rhythmically. So I'm in that moment. You get that when you're creating. What am I doing? This. And then you go, okay, what was that idea I was having? About the rhythm. About the fool following the rhythm of the top line. So maybe I just put numbers on top, and then I'll know how many times to repeat it in the little space. The pocket of time. There's a lot of stumbling blocks when you're creating. The principal one, obviously, is the cliche of starting. And then throughout, the kind of question of is there any point to what you're doing? But you brush that away quick enough. One idea will usually silence that voice. And I really like this process because as yet, I only have a vague notion of how this will sound. And I can see how each thing is evolving from the thing before. And there's a relationship there, which makes it worth pursuing. So now I have this idea. But as with creating, you make mistakes sometimes, and I noticed that the numbers weren't staggered correctly. I had to redo them. But that's alright. That's why you scribble things out. So I got it all fixed up. And now I had something. I figured when I got my guitar, I'd have a top part alternating between the notes in that space the allotted amount of times, while the fool always follow behind with the rhythm from before. Got me thinking, how could I evolve this? Maybe there's a underlying harmony going on. So I decide to combine the first two sections above and put the notes in it in an order, like a scale or a mode. I call it the AB mode there because it's got the notes of the A chord and the B. Not A and B harmonically, but just the labels I gave it earlier. And something wonderful happens at this point, though I'm not aware of it yet. I've sort of accidentally made a 9-note scale. Kind of strange. So I go, okay, if that's how many scale degrees I have, I'll make that many chords, each built on each scale degree, as is traditional in Western harmony. Can't really go wrong. But because of the distribution of the notes in this strange sort of mode that goes beyond the octave, the chords that result are quite limited in an interesting way. They're mostly fifth chords in various states of inversion, and there's a 2 chord there, a 3 chord, and I think that might be it. And no matter how many scale degrees I went up, I kept basically getting the same chords in different positions, the 5th reoccurring a lot. So now I'm kind of getting excited because there's a pattern calling out to me here. I can kind of see it, feel it, like sort of that feeling of communication from the page itself. Stuff I haven't even put on there yet is suggesting itself, and who am I to disagree? So start slaving over a hot stave at this time and getting the mechanics of those chords going on, and I like this bit, so I feel kind of like this is as close as I get to graphic design, but it's a very functional image because it can be interpreted into music, which is what I'll be doing at the end of this. Again, it's just a cloud of harmony to me at this point, and pretty vague and misty, but I have confidence in it, especially because it's related to the first 2 bars, if you want to call them bars, of the smart and fools system above, which is in turn derived from the 4th harmony, stacked 4ths, alternating with the chromatic linking chords. So there's lots of spices on the rack. I find really the composition process, this kind of one where you're not listening while you create, you're chipping away at a sort of a body of noise that has everything in it, white noise and all the notes we can hear, and you subtract the ones that aren't required at that time. And when I'm writing these chords down, I like to remind myself that there's no such thing as chords, really. They're notes on the way someplace, coming from somewhere. You know, you've got one note and then it goes up a second and it's a new note. Well, it's really the same note in a new place. I suppose Fuchs wrote about that plenty. Gradus ad Parnassum. So I get real excited at this point because I can put down Roman numerals, which for some reason I really get a kick out of that, being able to define chords, and heck, even sometimes I get it right. And any excuse to draw a bracket between any two things, and I'm a happy man. So all the fifth chords get linked by a nice funky bracket, and are they seconds? They're linked. Damn, the camera I used is bad. I really will sort that out. So I make a list of all the chords, because listomania thing. I think that's common with my creative friends and colleagues. They think everything can be solved with a good list, and quite right too. So whenever I think chords, I start thinking about the bass. My new bass that I bought. I go, I get to use my bass. So here I'm completely nerding out on the different inversions and the types of chords that crazy mode gave me. As you can see, it's a fifth, a second, a fourth, and a third. That's going to create a nice cloud. Especially the inverted chords are going to be real sweet. There's kind of moments when you think, well, whatever this thing is going to be, it sure works on the page. I really think I write this stuff down so that the part of my brain that I can't access directly gets to work and maybe gets a message through to my conscious mind that's fumbling around for the reason to keep going. But again, the notion that, hey, I'm going to get to record this, I get to hear what it sounds like, who knows, it could be real trash, but I'll get to interpret this any way I please anyway. That's the advantage of not working with writing rhythm. It would take forever. So it's an unnecessary luxury. You can just, it's the harmony that really matters. You can do it in any rhythmic style you want. And any timbre. And 4 notes might not seem like a lot. When you look at it there, you think, hey, it's not a lot. It's quite a lot, because you can distribute them throughout the octaves and give different instruments any one of those 4 notes, and short notes and long versions. So 4 notes is a lot. It's not as many as 12, which is what we start with. You don't want to do that. I like getting all 12 in there, but not at once. Not always. So now, having a proper nerd out, deciding on the sequence of those chords I got from my mode. I'm thinking of this right now as a well I can draw from. It's always going to have water in it, but there's a purity to it that I liked a lot. All those fifths coming up again and again. I must remember to do modes that go beyond the octave again. I always like the idea of scales that cover more than one octave. They're different, and all the different chords you can make out of it. So, almost losing track of my senses, I decide to once again write down the inversions and the just because I'm digging it so much, to be honest, and enjoying writing the chords down. It's got a sense of cartography about it. I don't know why. Sort of a geography to music. You know, when you're listening to music, you are sort of somewhere. I think music maybe is it's an experience, not a thing. Music generates the experience and is maybe more of an emotion, which is weird when you think about commodifying it. You know, it's like selling anger or love, which maybe is fine. So I decide not to use the fifth in root position in the second instance, because I said, hey, save that close position fifth for the end. Feels right to have a phrase close like the jaws of an alligator, like those bootlaces. So now I'm sort of fully in it. It took kind of that long to get into that space. You kind of, when you say, oh, I'm going to go home and create this evening, and you go home and you tidy everything up and do some emails and, you know, vacuum and do all those things, and then you kind of finally get around to creating, but it's real late. That is the case here, by the way. Again, I'm rejoicing in putting brackets around things, because as soon as I do that, I see structure. I think, yeah, that's going to do something that's different to anything that's outside the bracket. However subtle, it's going to have its own quality. So at this point I decide to take some sagely advice from the listening book, and incredibly it says on the page, I'm doing music now, which was indeed entirely true, so I decided to write that down as well. The irony, of course, being that I was really distracting myself from the actual music making, so I decided to get back to it. Again, I do a kind of system, you know, the system I end up using in pieces like this, written in this way. They usually have two systems and two staves, and the top would be a phrase and the bottom will be a phrase. That's a lot to have in front of you. It's you can derive a lot from that. I sometimes change the direction of those dyad movements, but I often, of course, move the octaves all over the place. So I get thinking again about this bootstrap idea. I also wrote down telephone because it was in the listening book. I like the idea of so what's the feeling of an old telephone exchange? Or hold music, or something staccato. Anyway, I get this idea to weave back and forwards between the chords. So for every two chords, I get a 3-note phrase as it bounces from one chord to the next and back again, taking a note each time on the way. similar to above, I have them move in contrary motion, but in the first instance, the fool was falling, and in this he is rising. So he is following the fool. So these are these classic moments where a tiny slip of judgment and you are in trouble. So I decide to add my second favorite thing after brackets, which is these tie lines and lozenge-shaped sections. I like it because it makes the sheet music look a little bit like a comic book or the work of R. Crumb. I'm very fond of that, and I feel this is as close as I'm going to get to being R. Crumb. So now I have another system. I'm in my happy place. So now I have a related second section derived from the first section by way of chord degrees and inversions from a strange 9-note mode. I decided to add the last 9th note sort of peppered throughout the piece, and that inspired me to add foreign notes to the stacked fourth chords by putting a second below the top note, so there'd be this shimmer at all times. Now I start thinking, couldn't I make a mode out of the second and third section like I did with the first and second? Surely I could, and third and fourth, fifth and sixth, sixth and seventh, same on to 9. You could, and that's why and how one can write a very long piece indeed. But for now I decide that I'll just use these 2 sections and introduce elements as it goes between them when I render the final piece. And I decided with such a strict structure I would allow myself to play freely over it in a section and introduce a chaos element or soul aspect of not too worried about how the relationship works. So you know I'm down to business when I lasso areas of my page and just start drawing arrows. That's when I've truly given myself to the thing, and to show the development trajectory of the piece. I like to be able to remember, and it's useful when you're recording it. So there it is, aesthetically at least, undeniable thing of beauty. Musically we'll see. I'm going to get my guitar out now and my bass and interpret the notes into particular rhythms and define the space and This is the bit I really enjoy. So I hope you like it. This is So the Fool Follows After. Thanks for dropping by.